weeks ago, an article came out that kind of implied Michael Jordan did not deserve his Defensive Player of the Year award in 1987-88. By going through every play in 6 home games that year, Tom Hamerstroh and Reinis Lachis proved that his blocks and steals were wildly inflated by the statistician in Chicago Stadium. But does this prove Jordan wasn't the best defender in the league that year? Is there a way to more accurately determine his value on the defensive end? Well, thankfully, I was able to get a hold of no less than 10 full games from that season to do what no one else has done yet. Use the video evidence to break down what he was doing on this end. After all, he was so dominant on offense that he won the MVP award as well, a feat no one else ever did and a fact that helps cement his legacy as the greatest of all time. Now, stats should only play a small part in rating a player's defense, and in front of a national TV audience on CBS, Jordan wanted to put the whole league on notice that he was going to wreak havoc on both ends of the court all season long. With Hakeem dominating the low block by this time, MJ knew he had to help his teammates, and here's the primary way he got his block shots: on post players from behind. If he was on the strong side, he'd take advantage of post players who didn't normally kick it back out by turning his back to his own man and using his leaping ability to his advantage. Guys like Hakeem never conceded the guard being able to block their fadeaways from behind, and he learned the hard way that he had better be aware of where Jordan was before shooting. Purvis Short smartly used the cross screen to get open for his patented over-the-head release jumper, but MJ could elevate high enough to use a swatting motion to knock the ball away and erase the shot. World B. Free thought he had him when Jordan went for the reach-around steal, but he was so quick he could recover into the air and swat jump shots away as well. Michael was extremely aggressive from the weak side and made people think twice about shooting in the lane when he was around, something that Rudy Gobert does at 7 feet. But Michael was maybe 6'5" in shoes, and the fact that he was a de facto rim protector at his position was a gigantic advantage that propelled the Bulls to the 3rd best defensive rating that year. If you don't remember Alex English, he was one of the greatest scorers of his era, and despite being at the end of his career, was still pouring in 25 a game. His high set point generally meant no one could block his jumper, but MJ could. Any chance he got, he would disconnect from his man on the perimeter in order to swoop in and block a shot near the lane, as English found out again. They thought they could attack the height advantage down low, but Jordan's quick leaping ability again gets him something unheard of at the time: a block of English's jumper. Back in this era, kickouts from the post weren't as much of a thing, as big men roamed the paint in great numbers and generally needed to only be concerned with where their man was when getting a shot off. But MJ would terrorize them by flying in at all angles. Forwards and guards were also not immune when they got in the vicinity of the basket, as Michael had the freedom to roam the entire floor looking to block as many shots as possible, leading to a career high in block shots per game. But even with his inflated home stats, it's clear he brought the energy on this end. That said, his attempts to block so many shots would often result in a foul as he got caught up in the air and out of position, causing enough contact with the body or the arm that the ref had to blow the whistle. And these weren't the kind of low-harm fouls where the other team checks it back up. No, these were the damaging ones that put Bulls opponents on the free throw line. For full disclosure, I was at all of these games in Chicago Stadium, so I got to see Michael's defense in person. And there was nothing like going to a game there, as it was the loudest stadium in North America. And if you want to have a similar experience with your favorite players, then you must download SeatGeek. It's the best app for finding tickets to any concert, sporting event, or the theater, and I use it all the time for years and years. In fact, I just went to Las Vegas to see U2 play in the Sphere, and I used SeatGeek to make sure I was getting the best deal on tickets. It was so easy to get the tickets transferred to me, they're guaranteed, and I had an absolute blast with some of the most stunning visuals ever seen at a rock concert. So, use my new code BBALL10 and save 10% off of any tickets you get for a limited time. Click on the link below, use my code BBALL10, and you can find out how Michael's attempts at steals might be the best part of his defense, since it turned into offense when he'd steal the ball in the middle of the court. The problem with steals, however, is that sometimes it's not always clear who should get the credit, the guy deflecting the ball or the guy who comes up with it. During this season, he made life miserable for ball handlers he wasn't guarding, reaching in from one pass away every chance he got. If he wasn't getting so many steals, a coach would probably get pretty frustrated since it pulled him out of position on his own man, and if the gamble didn't pay off, it led to open shots for the other team. Not only that, these could also lead to a lot of reach-in fouls with such overt swiping, which would explain why he committed the second highest fouls per game in his career and had as many as 5 fouls in over 20% of his games played. On ball, he was a panther who could literally eliminate drives with his cat-like quickness, forcing his man to end the dribble and pass out lest he commit a bad turnover at the hands of MJ. And he tended to be at his best in this area when the game was on the line and the Bulls absolutely needed to stop. I still haven't seen anyone move with the kind of grace and explosion Michael did, and it was remarkable to see him disrupt so many other pros with his overwhelming athletic ability. While people point to the allowance of hand checking and more physicality back then to prove that it was easier to play defense, I'd also argue it was easier for 2 more reasons. One was that guards rarely jacked up quick threes off the first pass in the offense. I'm sure Michael understood this and didn't have to pressure his man that much, knowing that he'd almost be required to make one more pass before the offense could begin to attack the basket. I saw plenty of times where he would give a huge cushion and not need to be in his stance on catches like this. The other reason it might have been easier to defend the perimeter back then was because almost every wing catch had a big man posting up on the strong side block, and probably a weak side big man trying to duck in. With such poor spacing all the time, there simply wasn't a ton of room for a wing player to drive to the basket. Again, I believe Michael understood this as well, and didn't have to be as worried all the time about getting beat to the hoop. And this allowed him to anticipate the midi pull-up so many players had to master back then, knowing there were probably 4 players wandering in the lane at any one time. If there was one flaw I detected in his defensive game, it was defending against pin downs. This was the most shocking thing I analyzed, considering the pin down was the most common way for shooting guards to get open back then. Michael was consistently late recognizing them, and he'd take poor angles that led him to run smack dab into them and yielding open jumpers. He'd also cheat by shooting the gap, looking for steals, which led to flare cuts and more openings due to bad defensive positioning on his part. His teammates understood this as well, as BJ Armstrong related here.
Michael had problems with a certain player. Anyone who could catch and shoot.
And run screens.
And run around screens.
He hated chasing screens.
Because he was a ball watcher. You know, he
gambled all the time.
Because he's trying to get in the passing lane.
And this led me to go through 2 specific games, one against Randy Whitman and the Hawks, and the other versus Dale Ellis and the Supersonics, since these 2 guys were great at off-ball movement. Here he sneaks to the inside of the screen, delaying him enough to give a good shooter a wide open shot from 17 feet. You can see MJ ball watching on the weak side while Whitman finds the open space. Again, he tries to shoot the gap inside the screen, which just allows the screener to slow him down. They again catch him a step slow, reacting to the quick pin down, and when he goes to the inside, it allows Whitman plenty of space to get a quick release 16-footer off and in the hoop like it's a layup. This one was crazy. He shoots the gap over the top to deny the pass, which triggers the flare cut to the corner by Whitman. Jordan does a merry-go-round on the screen, which is a strange choice, and he's lucky Whitman doesn't nail the most open jumper he's gotten so far. This happened in another game they played as well, where MJ doesn't know where the ball is here, and then gets stuck under 2 screens as Whitman is getting another wide-open jumper that he almost never missed from that range. The Seattle game was even more troubling, as Dale Ellis was the 7th leading scorer in the league that year and had a size advantage on Jordan. On the out-of-bounds play, Michael is bent over and doesn't know where the ball is, unable to get a hand up as Ellis casually hits the 17-footer along the baseline. Here's another play where he doesn't know where the ball is and walks underneath the obvious screen, allowing Ellis to pop out to the open spot and get a wide open shot that shockingly misses. I was surprised to see MJ chase around the pin down since he normally shot the gap, so Ellis expertly curls back into the lane. Michael has no urgency to get back in position, and it's an easy layup. On this baseline out of bounds, Tom Chambers clearly comes across to set the screen, Jordan is late reacting but uses his quickness to get around the second screen while simultaneously elevating for his patented block from behind that triggered his offense, as Xavier McDaniel has to foul him to stop him from dunking. Here's another simple pin down. He opts to go inside the screen and simply cannot get there to even get a hand up on the quick release midi with the shooter's roll. Make no mistake, had Dale Ellis been playing today, he'd have one of the highest salaries around because he could score from deep and move without the ball and finish inside as well, as Michael completely loses him on the baseline cut. If other teams tried to post Michael up, he was an expert at disrupting the post entry pass by stepping around and knocking the ball away, leaving his man desperately trying to hold him off to no avail. The problem is, this type of gamble didn't always pay off. I think it ended up being pretty even in terms of advantage-disadvantage overall, but on this Ellis post-up, Michael's gamble does not pay off and it leads to the easy jump hook over Dave Corzine. And finally, they run him through a double staggered pin down and his figure 8 route ends up being suboptimal, as Ellis gets another midi without so much as a hand up. But it wasn't all bad defense because Jordan expended so much energy and focus on this end. He stays with Ellis on the screen, then remains glued to him on the cut under the basket, and properly chases around the screen. He's active and engaged to take away the slice cut as best as he can, and because this pass would have been a skip, he can shoot the gap with time to recover, thwarting the pass altogether. Watch his cat-like quickness to go on the high side of this pin down into a denial of the pass, forcing the offense to go deeper into their options. This is one of his best defensive plays of the season as he deflects the ball loose, then knocks it away from Chambers again to steal it. While he cannot hit the pull-up jumper on the fast break, he hustles back down court to stop the Sonics' attack, closing out to Ellis to take away the opening for the little pull-up jumper, forcing a spin move, and then contesting this into a turnover as Ellis landed before releasing the pass. The Bulls would play a little 1-3-1 zone in the half court, which is perfect to allow Michael to roam and pressure on the whole side of the floor as he knocks the ball from Chambers into a steal. When they go down low to take advantage of the size mismatch, Michael simply waits for Ellis to turn into the shot and strips the ball clean out of bounds. Michael ramped up his intensity as the game wore on, closing out hard to stop the shot from being taken, then eliminating the drive altogether before pouncing on Ellis with a fantastic contest that left him no room to get it off. Here, he fights off the back screen, then chases under the screen to eliminate the flare cut. He's there in a flash to dissuade the pass, gets a body on Ellis to slow the cut, and finally is the last line of defense to contest this shot into a miss. Wow. He did get caught trying to shoot the gap over the top of the screen again, but look how fast he can close the distance into a decent contest that causes the shot to be way off. And to end the game in overtime, he has to pick up McDaniel up top, who had hit the three to tie it in regulation. This time he gets right in his face and deflects the ball twice, enabling him to put an exclamation point on a big home win over a tough Western Conference team. Despite some issues with MJ's constant gambling on defense and difficulty navigating pin downs, it's vital to understand how impactful he was on the defensive end. He was everywhere, with permission from the coaching staff to leave his man when he felt an opening to get a deflection or a steal. And this meant the opposing team had an added level of anxiety whenever he was in the vicinity. If you think about defense in today's game, who displays this much activity on so many defensive possessions? This could never be a bad thing when it inspired his teammates to exert similar energy, as a rookie Scottie Pippen was busy taking notes, which put him on a path to be arguably the best perimeter defender of all time, thanks to the modeling by a player at the height of his powers in the midst of one of the most dominating seasons the NBA had ever seen. Someone who wholeheartedly deserved the MVP, as well as the Defensive Player of the Year award.